We've all got Saturday night fever on a Thursday. That's how good it is. President Trump has been fighting a long war against the media, as you know. He's convinced the press is out to get him. A new poll does seem to support his conclusion. A Pew survey determined media coverage in his first 60 days in office was about 3 times more negative than President Obama received, about 2 times more negative than Presidents Bush and Clinton. Mr. Trump's approval rating, however, is on par with Obama's in his first year, so the people may not be so influenced by the negative press. Does it surprise you, Brian, that he
Give me a second to compose myself.
You thought it was all quite positive because the president is a huge fan of Fox and Friends, where you broadcast every morning from 6 to 9 a.m. on the Fox News channel.
Right, and 90%.
All times Eastern.
Thank you very much, Kennedy, and you've been on before, too, wearing something totally different.
No, I wear the same drab gray dress every day.
Different earrings?
I'm just
different accessories.
Just trying to add some color.
Thank you.
So I will say this. There's no doubt about it. The negative coverage has been so overwhelming, it's almost comical. In fact, I used those last few days when I had time off to reflect. I flip channels, and I listen on Sirius, and I listen. I'm amazed at how the president is actually programming 3 other networks by his tweets. They are so outraged by what he says, they book guests around what he's tweeting in the morning and throw their whole rundown in the street about it. So he's playing into it. I get that. But it's so overwhelmingly negative. What they're not understanding is they have never come across, either have I, a fighter like this. He fights every story that he doesn't like and feels is incorrect every single day. That's why people say, I'm exhausted.
But the danger is, Marie, that he can come off as thin-skinned.
Yes.
But at the same time, Brian's right, it doesn't seem to hurt him. You know, as much as the press tries to subtly and overtly take him down and sort of misproduce the coverage, it doesn't really have the intended effect.
Well, we'll see, right? I mean, his poll numbers, his approval rating, all of his numbers are historically low for a first-term president. They are lower than anyone else since we've started modern polling. He has kept his base, which is about 30 to 33%, but that's not enough to win elections. So we will see if all of the negativity surrounding his presidency, both...
Does he cause the negativity? Is it because he picks
I was just going to say, both of his own making, both of his own making and some of the media coverage. We'll see if that has an impact in 2018 when he's not on the ballot, but his party is. And we'll see how that impacts senators who he needs to get legislation passed that are also running this year. We'll see. I think it's still an open question, but he does bring a lot of it on himself.
Tom?
And he likes that. He likes the fight, I think.
I think people like the fight, too. He is like Toto, pulling back the curtain, and the entire establishment, everything has been pulling the reins and pretending they're the Wizard of Oz.
Who's
and now
the
we're
wizard?
seeing that they're not, that the media, the establishment, they're all, you know, there's nothing there. And so he exposes them for what they are. Included in this 5% of positive stories for Trump were headlines like, President wins the election despite losing the popular vote. Like that's as positive as it gets for him. Well, but now we trust the mainstream media less, and I think that ends up being a good thing.
Well, Katie, it's interesting because we were reading some articles this morning before Outnumbered, when the 3 of us were on the couch together, joyfully. And it's interesting because even when you have a story from The Hill or Politico or the New York Times that talks about some of the economic success that the president is enjoying right now, it also points out that, you know, Wall Street is not correlated with any sort of presidential edict or influence. And, you know, and that's when they kind of go subtly out of the way to say, but Obama, during his first year, he was so magical. Everything was wonderful.
I don't know if it's so subtle
The world fell
anymore,
apart, and he fixed it with presidential super glue.
Yeah, well, as someone who has a journalism degree, I will say, as I said earlier, there's always going to be a tension between the government and the press. That is the entire purpose of a unbiased media. However, that being said, that's not the territory we're playing in anymore. Every headline is politicized. Everything is a fight. And honestly, it really is lazy journalism. For them to throw all of their headlines to focus entire newspapers around tweets means that they're not actually doing the digging. They're not doing the real investigative work that they need to be doing on big topics. We've seen them really screwing up big reports with anonymous sourcing about major Russia bombs that have repeatedly had to be retracted or corrected. So I think they need to take a step back. They've said this, many of them themselves, to just kind of regather themselves, think about what their priorities are in a story, and take back their liberal bias a little bit and not let their positions on the policies affect the way that they go after the facts.
Okay, one of the comments that you made earlier today, Marie, was, in being a spokesperson at the State Department and for the former president, it doesn't feel like the press is fair. It's like from where we sit, the New York Times and other institutions, very kind and glowing toward President Obama and Secretary Clinton. But do you think that the way the press covers the president now, is it going to be the same level of scrutiny for the next Democratic president?
Probably. I think so.
You really think so? You think that they're going to keep that Brian
Well, it
shaking his
depends
head?
on who it is. But Hillary Clinton certainly got as much scrutiny. Let's look at all of the Hillary Clinton stories we've talked about over the last year. I do want to give one little shout out to the reporters, though, who have done a good job this year. And we have had stories that have broken major news, whether it's on the Russia investigation or other topics. There are reporters who are doing a good job. The problem is when news outlets don't, when they have to retract stories, when they have to correct stories, that makes it harder for everyone else. So let's focus on the good journalists and try and make the bad ones better.
Will there ever be a healing of this rift between the presidency and the press, and is that necessary?
It's not
or
necessary.
should the press be as harsh with every administration as they are with this one?
Well, it would be nice if they were, but as you said, President Obama, he got treated with kid gloves, but he still wants to go back to the old days of Walter Cronkite. Did you see him the other day with the Prince? He says, I wish we still,
2, 4, and 7.
Three networks.
Yeah, that would have been great.
He said, then we were all on the same page. Yeah,
right.
Of course we were.
There's two
page.
things the president could do to change things subtly and get over 50% this year. Number one, do something bipartisan, even if it ticks off Republicans. And number two, let other Republicans do some of the fighting for him, because he has not had anybody in his corner early. But really, from August on, more and more lawmakers are getting into, including Mitch McConnell, fighting for him and saying that was unfair and let me do this. Let me be at the tip of the spear for a while. If he could back off and let some other people take some of the fire, he'll begin to get closer and closer to 50%.
I think you're right, but I also think it runs so contrary to his nature.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's not who he is.
That's hard for him to delegate. I think he's good, and this is why he likes having so many generals around him, because he's good at delegating the policy stuff, the foreign policy and national security that may not be as natural to him as some of the economic stuff. But when it comes to fighting and picking fights, I think he feels like he does it better than anyone else.
With the media, it's a strategy, because the media is highly unpopular, and he knows that when he attacks them, there's a lot of people who like it because the media is unpopular.
But sometimes he backs off, like Eminem, for example. He thought for sure he's going to go after this kid. No, I'm not going to touch
And
him.
it drove Eminem crazy.
Right.
Eminem was so mad.
Right. And if Eminem's mad, I'm mad. I've said
That's your motto.
Right.
Yeah, we call him 8 Mile Kill Me.
Right, which is it's a longer nickname than my name, which is a nickname should be shorter by nature.
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Right.
President Trump, El Presidente, not happy with China today. He says the country has been caught red-handed doing something not good with North Korea. What is that? How nefarious? We'll tell you next.